Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Sendra D, where we dive deeply and help you wake up to the essence of what it means to live a real, authentic, affluent life. Beyond the balance sheets, the bank accounts, the private jets, the political offices, into the realm of inner wealth and personal power. I'm Sendra D, your companion guide on this trajectory of truthful self-mastery as we celebrate your individuality and your sovereignty. Well, good day, everyone. Welcome to a fantastic episode of the Frankly Speaking with Sendra D podcast. My name is Sendra D. I am the host and entertainer on the Frankly Speaking with Sendra D platform. And of course, and I have today with me Mr. Jose Merino of Rewire Holdings based in London. I'm based in London too, but I can't take the weather. So I spend most of my time in Florida since COVID. But I want to welcome him because he was such a fantastic guest last time. And I'm going to link the previous episode on how to prevent fraud in larger institution. His platform, which is with Rewire Holding, helps those large institutions prevent fraud. And we wrapped up the last episode touching a little bit on the consequences to individuals who have been affected by fraud. I've mentioned, maybe have not because it's been so recent that, I myself have been affected by this on a personal level. And it just brought me to some level of awareness of how fragile we are in the online forum. So, my social medias were hacked, and including my bank accounts, my credit cards, everything. Besides the fact that I have no doubt that these people, I say to them, if you're going to go in there, you might as well pay all my bills. But that's not what they want to do, is it? They don't help, they hurt people. And that's the sociopathy that we're faced with nowadays, because in order for someone to want to disturb someone's life so deeply, so profoundly, there is some level of sociopathy and narcissism. And on this podcast, I talk a lot about narcissism and sociopathy because I feel like we've been plagued in society with this type of disease. It is a mental health condition. And I tell people all the time, you have to have compassion for these people, how miserable they are, because in order for someone to want to hurt someone so deeply, they must be hurting themselves. And of course, we who have been affected by this kind of condition directly or indirectly, we know how painful it is sometimes to come through the other side. But fortunately for me this time, it was just a matter of making a lot of phone calls, going to the police, reporting them, writing reports, telling the story again. But without further ado, I want to bring in Jose Merino, who is the expert in this field. Without getting too deep into my personal story, I want to welcome Jose once again, Mr. Merino, and thank you again for joining us and on such short notice. But what I wanted to do today is, the topic of the podcast is how you can shield your wealth, because as I was mentioning to you before, but let me go ahead and introduce you again and fill in the blank where you have not, where I did not. So basically, Jose Merino is the CEO of Rewire Holding. It was in a startup phase. I'm not sure how you've evolved, because I know you were in the capital raise process last time we talked, and you are also an ex-banker like myself. And I say X with a proud. I think I took off all the banks that I've worked for from my LinkedIn profile. I don't want any more of that evidence that I was part of the system. But anyway, so he is CEO and founder of Rewire Holding. It's a fintech software company, and it's the ecosystem based on intellectual properties. And he's a serial entrepreneur, experience in telecom, mobile, blue chip, executive experience, business, finance, startups, and ex-vice president of operations in Philips Consumer Communications in the United States. Prior to that, former director of wireless at the French multinational Alcatel. So I've said a lot. I'm going to link them because I give the whole bio in my previous episode. So I'm going to make you go watch that episode because first of all, it's a precedence. It's a, it teases you into this episode because again, before we talked about institutions, so this is the day we're going to focus on how corrupt the system has become, not because the people within so much, but the people without, the outsiders who are very well versed in your field. So welcome, Jose. What did I miss? What would you like the audience to know that I did not share with them? Besides that, you're a fantastic individual who wants to help with you have a cape and you're trying to help humanity from fraudsters. So tell me, what did I miss?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back on the show. Last time was, I think, October, November last year. Lots of things happen in a short period of time, more in this era of technology moving at a fast pace. AI being probably the fastest moving one in both directions, in good, but also in bad. Okay. Having said that, financial fraud comes in many different forms and disguises. The basic advice I would give individuals to shield themselves, you can't shield yourself 100% unless the financial institutions and the card providers actually start adopting more aggressive measures to help the end consumer. But until that happens, there are some things you can do. I mean, the typical things is for a criminal or a fraudster to mess with your finances, they need information from an individual. They first go on your social media. So first of all, be careful what you write in there. Be careful what pictures you put in there, because once you say you have a birthday, they know your birth date. They only miss the year. Any other picture they find, they might link the year. So they have your name, they have already your birthday, and eventually they will gather all the information they need to basically help them to hack your system. Okay? Phishing is one of the big problems lately. What is phishing? They actually fish for your information to see if they can enter into your databases, either your social media, your bank account, use your card, what have you. And phishing, again, comes in many different disguises. They send you an SMS with information, and typically there is always an urgency needed. When you read the messages, so something along the lines like, you have to react immediately. There's always something telling you there is an urgency. If there is an urgency, the first thing you should do is step back and do not react. Do not click on any links that you receive on an SMS or on an email. Both are just dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Because with AI, the amount of websites you can create in a day is just mind-blowing. Okay? And they just don't create any websites. So what they do with artificial intelligence, they go on the websites of the big companies. For example, a company who sells goods, banks, and they literally copy them with artificial intelligence so well that you can't see the difference between one and the other. So any link in your email or your SMS giving you an urgency to do something, and the likelihood what they tell you in that message is something you relate to. That's why they send it to many people. If they name a bank name, likely 1 in 3, 1 in 4 will be related to that bank. So they send that message. So once you go to that website and you click on that link, you're sold. Because any information you click in there, or if you do log in, you basically gave the criminal all your credentials. So never click on any of these links. Always, if you see something that you think you need to do, go to your official website that you have in your memory, or to the app of your bank or the company where you normally buy goods. Don't click on any link supposedly coming from Amazon, because the O may be a 0 and the naked eye cannot see the difference. So you have Amazon.com and then you have am0zon.com. So they both look the same. Okay. So always go to your app. Don't use your credentials. Typically, you have them stored either in your phone or you have them in your PC. The danger is when you lose your phone or it gets stolen. Massive, massive problems. Okay. So again, until either the phone companies or the financial institutions, including these big companies that sell goods online, until they increase their protection to the end user rather than to their own balance sheet, they're two different things. Until then, you have to take also some precautions, okay? I'm not going to go into all the details. I prefer you ask me some questions and then I'll dig into.
Well, I wanted to give you the space to actually clarify. So, where we are today, as opposed to where we were a year ago and even 5 years ago, the difference that I hear from you is artificial intelligence. I must say, I'm one of those people that, embrace artificial intelligence, the AI, the ChatGPTs, the OpenAI, all of those concepts, because I am well versed in emotional intelligence. And I think that's where the discernment needs to take place. Don't surrender your power to these artificial concepts. You have to really think through what it is you're doing. I actually had a birthday in February. I did not post anything about my birthday. And so it was interesting because I didn't feel, first of all, I don't care about birthdays anymore. You get to a point you're like, okay, fine, it's just a number. But then also the people who are really engaging in putting their information out there, their children's birthdays, because what do you use when you protect your information? Or you have, they drop down the menu to say, pick your favorite color, pick your favorite, fruit, your children's birthday, the city we were born, all that information now, because social media actually prompts you for that information. If you go in someone's profile, you can see where they were born, where they live, and all that. So, I think what you're saying now is think smart, not don't bring logic into it and put aside how can I say, your put aside your lack, or be more defensive versus just, relax. It's not, social media is supposed to be fun. Now it's been a little traumatic for me, because now you have all these levels of authentication. And that's one of the things you talked about last week. I kept thinking about you while I was going through the process. That's why I said, Jose, can you come on? But even with that, they were still trying to get a password, because it was happening a month ago and I didn't pay attention, because I said there's probably a glitch in the system when, Instagram, and I don't manage. And for those of you who think you're reaching out to me, I have a team of people who does this for me. I don't have enough time to go to social media, but I get the passcodes because it's on my phone. So they would request the passcodes and I would ignore it. I ignored it. And that was beneficial to them. So artificial intelligence is something that is helpful, but also can be, I'm not sure if it's harmful in a sense, but it is helping people who are wanting to be helpful. So yes, so my point is, it's how you're using it, right, Jose? Because everything in life, including, holy scriptures, can be used for good or evil. So I guess there's a question here somewhere. You said, let me ask you a question. You can tell the wheels are turning in my head, and because I'm still processing this whole experience. So what are some of the comments? I talked about some of the mistakes that I made. So what are some of the, how can I say, the main three? So as I was doing my research, I hear they also do SIM swaps and card cloning, in addition to scams like, like the AI impersonations. So how would you rank these three, in comparison? So we have AI impersonation, cards, what is card cloning, and SIM swap. What are those? Can you explain a little bit about these other two? Because I know you talked about AI impersonation. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if you go back to SIM swap, this is basically, it's a procedure where a criminal steals or hacks a database from a third party, typically not from the big company who is the target, for example, a bank or an Amazon or what have you. They actually go to suppliers, okay? And their suppliers are more vulnerable, less protected than these big corporations. Once they hack a database like that, but mind you, big corporations are not exactly immune. Some of them did get hacked. I mean, AT&T was hacked just less than, I think, a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
millions of data was stolen. Okay, but these companies are professional companies who report it. These suppliers don't necessarily report when they get hacked. So your information is out there in the dark web and is being sold to anyone who's willing to pay for it. So now you have your phone number, your name, your birthday, without phishing, just stealing it. Who is available? They know the number, so they call the mobile operator and convince them with the right answers of the information they have, and they receive an eSIM. eSIM basically is an electronic SIM sent over the air to a phone, but not your phone. It's sent to the phone of the criminal. Okay, and that is a danger. So that means that your SIM card is still in your phone. You do not receive the two-factor authentication, but the criminal does.
Mm-hmm.
If they have now access to any credentials, now they have the two-factor authentication. They can access any account they have the credentials for, which is a huge danger. If that happened to be your social media, first thing they do is change the password so you have no access to it.
Yeah.
And it's a nightmare for people.
It is a nightmare. I've had to let go of one account because I said, this is ridiculous. Nobody knows who you are. You're not that important in my life. I had to set you free. So Parler was the one that just still thinks that they said I am not following community guidelines. And I'm thinking, you know what? This was a free, because they banned something that I put up, but then they banned me completely. It was very strange. But anyway, I set them free, Parler. I set you free. You don't need me. You have enough people. But so we talked, and the third one is card cloning. What is card cloning?
So a card cloning typically happens in two different ways. Again, either it's the same database that they stole where your phone number was in, they have your card number, and even worse is they have the CVV 3-digit code. Okay, that means if they could get access to your two-factor authentication, which they can by doing a SIM swap, now they basically clone your card virtually because you still have your card. Criminal is using it online, receives the two-factor authentication, and they start making purchases in your name.
Yep.
They the goods. Again, not pleasant for people for who it happened. But the other way of card cloning is, and typically they're either not right in their head, forgive my English,
It's
or
okay. That's perfect English.
or these are people who are not well paid. So you have the two. So the people who are not well paid, you somehow understand, but they're still criminals. Okay. The ones who are well paid, these are the ones I call they're not right in the head. Why? Because they do work in a decent job. They just have access to your card when at the moment you pay in a point of sale. The point of sale, they modify it so it's not original software in there. So you actually make the payment, but they did copy the card at the same time. That means now there is a clone of your card. You have your physical card, but he has all the data. All he needs to do is print a new one or use it online. That's also card. Okay. Now, that even happened to me in Jakarta a couple of years ago.
Really? Tell. What
Yeah.
happened?
So I paid at the hotel. Within less than an hour and a half, I was at the airport waiting for my flight to be boarded. And all of a sudden, I get a notification from my bank saying, you approve this transaction. I was a couple $1,000, was not exactly a cheap one.
No, I know it's happening to me now.
Yeah. And the first thing I do is decline and block the card. That's the first thing you have to do. Don't even think it. Okay. Don't start questioning yourself. Did I not make it? The first thing is cancel and block. Okay. And of course, it was a card cloning because I still had that card in my hand. I checked after I blocked it. So this is a typical case of card cloning. Okay. Now, online fraud in 23 was already $32 billion, and it just got worse and worse and worse. It amazes me that both the financial sector and the card providers do not go even further. I think there is a good chance that Visa may do something actually good, which is abolish the cards. Because if the cards exist, your number is out there. If there are no cards and they're all virtual, not attached to any number, they can't use any information. Okay? Meaning you need to check the identity of at every single payment, which
Mm-hmm.
is the last missing bit. So Visa's probably going as far as transitioning from this physical cards to having no cards, and the number of your card to be dynamic, meaning it could be even change on a transaction by transaction basis to protect you. What is missing is to verify the identity at every single transaction, because if the card is stolen, cloned, it's certainly not you, it's somebody else. Okay, and they don't go as far, but obviously we understand it's a cost of doing business, but like you said, today is not about the business, today is about the end users, and the end
It is.
users are not served by that.
Yeah. For the banks I've worked for, I've always said to them, and they said, well, and I would say, stop calling me. It says, performance-based positions that I've had. Stop calling me and asking me what my performance for next month's going to be, because my clients tell me they're happy with my service. And as long as I'm providing that service, I think I'm doing a good job for the bank. And but the bank was so, and of course, I've removed all their names on my profile, so nobody will know who they are. But those who know me, they know already. They're not interested in my end. As long as there's no complaint, they're okay with it. They're more concerned with protecting themselves, and the end user, they are left to their own, detriment. So what happened with me, and I'll be a little bit more transparent, is they went into my account. So virtually they could access the account. And then they were paying the card off with my personal checking account. So it was just like a quagmire, a cluster, of, you know what I mean? I don't want to curse, family friendly show. And so they were using the card, paying it off, using the card, paying it off. And it was like within 24 hours, there was like thousands of dollars paid in. But because I have such great history with the bank, soon as I make a payment, it clears it on the card, and it
Mm.
automatically, continues to, they fill it up and they pay it off. They fill it up. And within 24 hours, of course, I had alerted them to one. They changed the card number and shipped me by the time I hung up the call, they had already started charging with the new card.
Mhm.
It was, I was baffled
Yeah.
because I get an email saying, thank you for activating your card. I was like, well, I haven't received the card. So I would call them back. And of course, the worst thing about this whole experience is the inconvenience, my time. So, you and I had to reschedule because I've had to neglect a few things for a couple of days in order to take care of this. And so, you know what? I tell people all the time, my podcast is based on real topics. Things that happen to me, things that matter to me, things that are affecting the community around me at large. And I'm grateful that this happened to me because, you get lemons, make lemonades, because it gave me podcast content. Because we talked about this at the end of our first chat. I said, what
Yeah.
about individuals? So the universe brought this experience to me because I have no doubt. So what, in your estimate, how many cards and how many bank accounts out there in the world that we live in today? How many people do you think? So what's the percentage of accounts that have been affected by this? What's the percentage of people like me who are spending hours trying to resolve these inconveniences?
In about a stolen phone and an emptied bank account. Now you hear it all the time. It's common practice that the phone is stolen and the bank account is emptied. What does that tell you? That the access to the bank account is not secure enough. Okay, so if the only protection that you have is the access, the two-factor authentication, whether this is your phone or not, all this disappears when they steal your phone. Because the only difference between you using the phone, your phone, and a criminal using your phone is only the person. There is no other difference between the two. So the identity of the user is not something that's being used commonly in the industry, which to me, even being in this industry, still blows my mind. And this is something you said before. AI has progressed a lot, even in the months since you and I had the last
Mhm,
show.
mhm.
And that is a short period. You're talking about less than 6 months. Okay, so it doesn't take a year anymore to make a jump leap. AI has gotten so good, so fast, that yes, they're using it for good, but also for bad. when they steal your phone, the easy way to bypass it is two ways. And the trend has changed since the last time we talked.
Mhm.
Before, it used to be they steal your phone and they're counting on the fact that the user has, let me call it, not a creative mind in protecting their accounts. For
Mhm.
example, when you do your Face ID on your phone, whether it's an Android or an iPhone, and you don't pass it, you have to enter a PIN code.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, don't use the common PIN codes numbers because that's what the criminals do. They just try, all zeros, all ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a couple combinations, and behold, they get in many of them. Once they enter your phone, all your life is out there to be used. Your social media, they can change password, post in your name, they can go into your bank accounts, you name it. It's actually you doing it in your phone,
Mhm.
but it's a criminal. In many cases, we hear users that the phone was stolen and the protection they thought they had just wasn't there. Okay. A criminal just uses AI and gets into your phone. Why? Because once they're into your phone, the first thing they look for is your social media, your
Mhm.
picture. Who are you? Because they actually don't know who you are when they steal the
Mhm.
phone.
Mhm.
But even if there is a face ID beyond the one of the phone, they find your face very easily in any picture on
Mhm.
your social media.
Mhm.
With that, they can create a real life video, they can create a nice picture. And if that is the next step of the protection, they'll go in. So
Mhm.
honestly, be careful. Just assume your phone will be stolen. That has to be the assumption. If your phone is stolen, what protections do you have? That is the simple way of thinking of it. Are your passwords strong enough? The 2FA, how does it work? Do they send it by email? Do they send it by SMS? If the answer is yes, and both those things are in your phone, start changing one of them. Okay? Because they're both in your phone, your email and your SIM card.
Mhm.
So try to find a different two-factor authentication, one that is not on your phone. So if that one is stolen, they don't have access to the two-factor authentication. Use a different email, which you only use on a PC that is at home, that's not with you in your phone.
Okay.
Okay, this is simple things like that can help you to reduce the grief when these things happen.
It is grief. It is definitely grief because there's a sense of in being invaded.
Yes.
Because we think about it's the government. It's bad enough that we went through it when we found out that Facebook was selling our data, and then we realized that we are. I used to watch this show called Person of Interest. It starts with "We are being watched."
Yep.
That's how it began, and I love that show. And so it started making me feel more aware of my surroundings. But now when I drive, my GPS will tell me there is a camera ahead. The GPS tells you there is a camera ahead at the traffic light. There is a camera. And so we know we're being watched. Okay, but we know at least those are being these are uh, again governmental processes, right? I'm not comfortable with that either, but to some extent I'm okay with it. But when you know that people with ill intent are accessing your information, there's a different level of grief that you touch on. The grief is I have been invaded. I am being exposed, and you have to go through a process. And sometimes there's shock because you're shocked that you're kind of wondering now you're in sort of paranoia mode, thinking, do they have access? So the other thing I wanted to bring about is the voice recognition. Voice recognition. Can they go as a podcaster? Can they go on my podcast, clone my voice, and also use that as authentication to my bank account? Because I called my bank and they said you've already been I don't even remember putting a voice verification process in place, but apparently that's in place for my account. And I keep forgetting to talk to them about that. But it's like to remove that. I am concerned that people can just go on the internet and find a clip of someone who said something. And of course, AI is cloning everything that's on the internet. So is that also a risk if we have a,
Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but the answer is yes.
I want to
With
cry.
with a clip of less than 30 seconds, AI is sufficiently advanced that they can actually mimic a full-blown conversation just from a 30-second and actually mimic the way you speak, the accent. It's actually really you. There is no way a person can make the difference between a snapshot from 30 seconds and then have a half an hour conversation. They can't tell it's you about any topic other than the 30 seconds.
Incredible.
Some banks use my voice as my password, especially when
Right.
you call them to confirm. Well, I wouldn't rely on that. That is actually a huge vulnerability.
That's definitely weak, you know. So we talked about this last time. Who are these people that work in these banks? I mean, clearly they haven't been, affected by these sort of, bad practices for them not to want to reconsider again your product. And again, this is not a promotional, show, but I can't stop saying how important your product, your technology is for the world at large, institutional and individual accounts. So where's the gap? What are we missing? Why are they so resistant? And we talked about there was a lack of communication because we're looking at every large institution has a security department. They have, they're doing stress tests, if something in the system breaks. It's not just in Mission Impossible or any of these, spy shows that you see people just trying to. This is in real time. This has happened to everyday people, and I'm fortunate to say I have backup accounts and I have funds in another account because they've had to freeze all of certain accounts, and I have other accounts. Point is, my people need to get paid. And now I'm having to tell my people, I'm sorry, I can't pay you. This account is frozen because the inconvenience the ripple effect. So tell me. So we have to go back to the people who actually we can do a little bit to protect ourselves, but on the back end, if the institutions that we are trusting and relying on, in addition to the government, that public-private partnership for corporations, to sort of create a shield for us as we talk about shielding wealth, we have to have some sense of reliance on the government and on these institutions that we do business with, right?
The answer is yes, but unfortunately, life is not as simple. If you look at the current financial institutions, the banks or the fintechs, they're actually extremely good in protecting the assets on the server side. They're quite good.
Mhm.
But when you look at the front door, so you're protecting your whole house, the windows are great and nobody can come in through the cellar, not through the roof. But the front door is easy, it's not locked. So I always say in a chain is only as strong as the weakest link.
Right.
Right. So if you protect your server extremely well, which I know they do,
Mhm.
when you go from a point of the application of your financial institutions, but not just financial institutions, this applies to companies like social media and it applies to companies who sell goods online. Okay, it's the same story because you have assets to protect. One asset is money, the other asset is actually more emotional. Your social media can create just as much pain as losing a couple $1,000s on your bank account,
Mhm.
right? And the same if somebody's using, for example, your Amazon account and spending your money because your card is stored in there. Okay, so the pain is different, but it's still pain.
Mhm.
So for me, I call it the front door. It's not sufficiently well protected. Is there a huge appetite for it? From my experience, talking to at least the ones I've been talking to in the last 6 to 9 months, not so high. The talk is very high. The actions are not as high. Okay. And the reason I say that is because on one hand, I hear, yes, they have interest to improve it from the end users, but not at the expense of the user experience. And these are two things that just don't go well together. Okay. If I'm telling you, look, Sandra, now instead of logging into your bank account in, I don't know, 0.1 second, it's going to take you 3-4 seconds. But your account will be 10 times better protected than before. The banks will go like, whoa, no, that changes the user experience for my client. So let me think about it. You as an end user will say, what, in half a second or 4 seconds? Hell yeah. protect my money or protect my social media, right?
Mhm.
There are two different sides that need to consolidate. Unfortunately, it's not the end user's decision.
Mhm.
They bear the brunt of the problem, yes,
Mhm.
but the decision is actually made on the other
It is
side.
not. Well, there
And
can be a
also,
revolution. There
yeah,
can be
and
a
it's,
revolution, people. Well, let's hold them to the fire. Let's make sure they protect us. So my question is to you now. Thank you so much for those answers and clarification. I feel like you're giving me therapy right now. I feel that, by listening to you talk about how widely spread this is, it makes you feel that you're not a bad person. Because at first I was like, how did I get so this happened? I'm a financier, I'm a banker, I'm a smart person. Well, guess what? We run out of time. We are quick. We want things to just be, we want things to be as easy as they were yesterday. But unfortunately, as we are changing in the world, these people are changing too, and they are catching up. And sometimes these people are smarter than the institution that we bank with, that protect the government and everything. It's because you know what? Technology is rapidly. So think about someone who has an idea to create a platform like Rewire Holding RH Security, but also think about the person while that wonderful platform is being created, there is someone thinking about how they're going to break that system that is protecting. So they are, you're creating the cure, and the problem is also being created. So how do you keep up with the advances that the criminals, what's your process in RH security? So anyway, yeah, go ahead and tell us, please, because I have a lot of questions, but I'm sure the audience wants to know, what are you doing to keep up with what they're doing?
yeah. So when we started shifting the company from financial products to security in the financial sector,
Mhm.
we actually started from the opposite side. We didn't think of the criminal. We thought as developers, what could we do to bypass our own system
Mhm.
and other systems of banks, fintechs, and what have you? And we came up with a lot of crazy stuff. Then we talked to industry veterans who have been there for many, many years, either in the card industry or in the banking industry. And then they tell us stories, but not necessarily stories from the bank side. They tell us stories the way the users see them. They translated then what happened. Like, for example, SIM swap for me was unknown until last year, early last year. When I did research, I found out that the FBI has been tracking it since 2021,
Mhm.
right? So it's been around for a while. And that one is the least impact in numbers. All the others have a much higher impact. Okay,
Mhm.
AI impact, negative impact, I mean, is a lot higher. Okay, so we then came up with a list. Okay, so these are the things that criminals could do. If we were criminals, how would we bypass the system? Then we added with what we got from the industry, and the result was RH security. In the process, we filed for 10 patents, but just like us and other companies who develop protections for the end users, and for the bank. So don't get me wrong. The protection is also for the bank, but like I said, they're very worried about changing or complicating the user journey. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's still something that needs to be resolved.
Mhm.
The criminals also advance.
Of
These guys
course.
don't wait for anybody. They don't wait for AI to be super fast or super
Mhm.
good. Very early on, they started to use it. And behold, they start to create fraud, and fraud started to go up. But as the AI became faster and better, these criminals could use it with exponential results.
Before we dive back in, it is a pleasure to tell you that my book, Sendor Inner Luxury, Unlock the Secret to Your Luxurious Self, now on Kindle and as well as on paperback. So feel free to rush and get a copy for your loved ones. In addition, if you are loving these extraordinary conversations about luxury, about balance, about emotional intelligence, about a little bit of politics, a little bit of spirituality. If you're loving all of it, well, rush to Amazon and get my book. You will learn emotional balance is from within. You will learn to elevate yourself to the frequency that you wish to express in the world. So there can be more love, more peace, more harmony. Well, there's more. You can rush to pre-order my next book, which is Sendra, Guide to Luxury Living and Emotional Balance. Well, for me, my brand is all about living from within, emotional balance, emotional intelligence, and luxury. And for me, these books are flowing endlessly from me to you with so much love. Let me know what you think. Let me know after you read it. Put a comment, put a review. I'd love to hear from you.
Meaning the same stuff they were doing before, they could do now much faster and many more people simultaneously. It's crazy. So basically, we are creating in these time and days millionaires, fraudsters. It's not normal. Normally, I'm used to hear about the millionaire because he did something great. He created a new product. He sold something. He had a good business. Now there's millionaire fraudsters. It's crazy. So you have to keep up with the criminals. Okay.
You have to, but unfortunately, right? Sometimes, you shock yourself, you come across something they've done, and the astonishment of what you find sometimes when you go down that rabbit hole. They are smart people, and I always say to there is a purpose for the darkness that it engulfs humanity, but because it shines, it makes the light shine brighter. So as they get more criminalized, I have to know that there are more good people out there looking to solve problems rather than create them. So I wanted to ask you, so how do you differentiate? Because I know you're not the only one in this space. How do you differentiate yourself from the other security platforms, the other security technology companies?
I mean, our own research was focused in where is the focus of the majority of the industry in terms of security. What we found is the vast majority, the security is focused to protect the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the competition there is not only ferocious, they're actually huge companies now. They're mostly billion-dollar companies. Whereas on the front door, we see very little competition. Okay. And guess what? It's where the problem still lies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we focus literally on the end user side, and I call it as a byproduct, it helps the bank. Because if the fraud is less or the financial crime is less to the end user, you have happier end users. But at the same time, the bank's finances will be better because in some cases, obviously, these end users, rightly so, go and file a complaint to the bank or sue them. Okay. And, in many or most cases, they actually win and the bank ends up paying. Well, I'm not sure in the US if once you remove all the regulatory bodies who are looking after these things, they're kind of disappearing, if that's a good thing. I personally think it's not a good thing. Okay. So the agency that was created to protect consumers, if that one is removed, it's not a good incentive for the financial institutions or companies who sell goods online to look after their end users in terms of financial crime or fraud. Okay. So that was a side comment without talking.
No, that's fine. But you touched on the elimination of a consumer department, the protection, consumer protection. Can you explain that? Was that something that happened recently? Because I am fasting from the news. I have officially taken, off from all things politics and business because my sanity depended on it. As of January 19th, I have not watched the news. I am trying to survive 2025 without any kind of destabilization, mental destabilization. So I decided I'm off. So the news that I subscribe to, a little bit of it, pretty much, just the stock market, but specifically about, and I know there's a lot of talk about, smaller governments. Is that one of the things that they've done, Mr. Musk has done?
It seems to be so,
So
yes.
that's going to be another topic for another day because I used to like him when he was just Tesla, but now he's just getting involved in too many things. He's got his hands in too many. Let me breathe.
A lot. I mean, one thing
Let
is
me just breathe, Jose.
yes, one thing is to say, look, you want to reduce the size of a certain department, like, for example, protection of end users, where fraud actually falls into, right? Especially related to finances or banks or fintechs, because it's a huge market in the US. The US market is, almost similar to the size of Europe, for example.
Right.
So we've seen the cases here. They're crazy. They're high. There's a lot. So having these protection from a government institution actually motivates the industry to take action. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, whether the discussion is if the size has to be more or less, that's fine for me. I always think there is always something you can cut somewhere, but removing it, I don't think it's a good idea. It sends the wrong signal. Okay.
I'm good for this concept of government efficiency. So
Yeah.
you create a new department to cut out other departments. So this new department, help me make sense of this. So a whole new department was created in order to eliminate some departments that were already there. First of all, I don't trust Elon Musk nor Vivek Ramaswamy to protect me. I don't. I think these two individuals are self-interest, but that's just my opinion. That's why I'm fasting, because you can tell I have a lot of them. I am fasting until April 21st after Easter. It's a real thing. I figured the journey to the cross is where we are right now. And I'm gonna be quiet about my journey, and I'm not gonna pull in more information. Whatever was grandfathered in for me is already. See, I know the little bits. Can you imagine if I was watching the news? I would be upset all the time. See, the thing is, I'm very candid. I supported Trump, and but again, in the big picture, he's just one man. He has this administration, and I've always said these people have no idea how the average person, what the needs are of the average person. I know I'm digressing. The point of this podcast is how to shield your wealth. And right, so far we've talked about on the financial aspect of first of all the benefits to the criminal. It's a $1 trillion empire, I'm sure at this point, $1 billion in fraud, but also to on the reverse of that, every penny they make, that's a loss for the average consumer. So how someone can reconcile in their mind that consumer protection is not needed, I know this is a topic. I'm going to shelf that. Maybe we could just do a podcast just on that. That's after my fasting on when I come out in April 21st. But talk to me about now something that crossed my mind, Jose, was because many of these institutions now are going offshore. I only I speak to I don't speak to anyone in the United States, seems like, anymore. Is that contributing to this problem? And I don't want to say close down all of the offshore in India, Philippines, wherever they are. But do you think that the level of security has been compromised because of this offshoring process?
Well, offshoring can be, again, good and bad. Okay. There's always a balance to things. I see no problem offshoring what I call day-to-day activities.
Mhm.
But with the new technology of artificial intelligence coming in, you do have to ask your question as an organization or as a company, does it make sense? Okay. And then comes the humanitarian factor.
Mhm.
There's always a balance between two things. Do I only look at my bottom line? Because maybe I can, get rid of 80% of the offshore or all of them. And I can have AI robots doing the job, or AI coders, or what have you, or phone support. that financial institutions do. On the other hand, there is social responsibility. And again, if you do have institutions that do protect consumers and social return from businesses to
Mm-hmm.
the community where they serve,
Mm-hmm.
there is a social responsibility. So,
Indeed.
like I said, there's a mix always between two. It's never black or white. There's like a gray area in between where sometimes you have to say, look, this is great profit. It's good for our share price, but we do have a social responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
Absolutely.
I'm one who is against automating everything,
Right.
even if it is possible. Okay, because the social responsibility is about people. It's not about things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So on that subject, again, it links and mixes to what
Sure.
you're going to talk on the next
It's a
podcast.
holistic process, thought process, right? So of course, there's, corporate social responsibility you want to give to the community where you are, but also you want to, create more jobs abroad and everything to some underserved population, Philippines, India,
Yes.
etc. The thing is, I just don't want it to cost me any money. The thing is, I am willing to pay more for more security, for waking up in the middle of the night, because your phone is buzzing because somebody's trying to access your account. That's not a fun thing. But also, I wanted to talk to you about, we go back to Elon. He talks about everything's going to be replaced. I'm thinking, is he going to be replaced too? Because I'm all for that. So he needs to be replaced because he's spending too much time, so focused on how he can improve technology, and he's not looking at the human component. And I think that's what needs to happen. We need to know that behind these accounts, there are human lives, there are human, situations that, fortunately, like I said, I'm comfortable enough that it didn't disrupt my life financially, but that I can't imagine someone who's depending on that one bank account. You freeze that whole bank account. You can't access it. You have to go to the bank. You're working 3 jobs and you have to go to the bank to like cash, because I had to go get cash, pay everything with cash. So to a message to those who are so AI hungry, desperate for AI, artificial intelligence to just, how can I say, automate the world. Before you go automating the world, think about the humanity. You talked about the humanitarian, the humanity, how that's going to incorporate, that's going to, how that's going to be reconciled within the system called humanity, because that comes first. I have my P's, it's like People Planet, right? So People Planet, how is that affecting all of that? The community, the people, you have to bring that into the conversation. You can't just think just about the bottom line or just how I'm making technological advances, how exciting that is. There are people who thrive just on the fact that they made this new discovery and they don't even think about how that's going to affect anyone. Okay, so that said, I'm so grateful that you were able to come on and talk about these. So why don't we give now we talked about it in the beginning, the protections and everything. What do you feel is the one thing that's still not being done? And if it's not, I mean, there's a lot of conversation. They're not looking at the end user, but what is the one thing if you were going to give advice to the banks themselves in summary of this conversation? Because I feel like they're not listening. They're just not listening.
I mean, if there was one advice I could give them, and I'd be happy to join them in one of these conversations, is pick a few. It may be 10, 50, or 100. And trust me, there's plenty to choose from because these things happen very frequently. End users of your own bank, invite them and let them explain the experience they went through. Okay, for example, and I don't have to go far. This is a family member of mine. Phone was stolen out of the hand, logged in. So they didn't even have to bypass the Face ID, nothing, because it was already open, right?
Oh my
Out
goodness.
of the hand with an electric bike, and phone was gone.
Was this in London?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
So if they listen to the experience of the users, I'm sure they will find two things. One is the emotional distress on
Mhm.
top of the financial distress of their own end users. And two, what they will find out is what did criminals do to cause that distress?
Mhm.
And with that information, the question then is, do I have protection against all these things at the same time, not just isolated? Because you need to protect about the majority of the cases or use cases, as I call them, that users really experience. So their phone stolen, whether they were using it or not. Some steal it in your pocket, you don't know if it's gone, but now the trend is they steal it whilst you're using it. So they don't even have to bypass anything. Can you protect against that? I know the answer is yes, because we do have technology. The question is, why don't you apply it? And then secondary, ask these same end users, would you mind if the protections we would put in take you a couple more seconds to either log in or to make a transfer or to make a payment by card, even if it's online or even if it's a physical card that somebody stole? And I promise you, at least to those people who have suffered, they will all tell you, please, tomorrow.
Yeah. Or yesterday, truly.
Yes. Or
Yesterday.
yesterday.
You know, in on that topic, thank you so much for that. And I'm a big I'm a you've you know, I've become an advocate now. I'm on Jose. I will have you on as often as. So we talk biometrics and how important it is. So which one do you think is more effective? It's when I was thinking about what you were saying. Is the voice act is a voice or is it fingerprint? Because I don't use, well, they use my voice, but fingerprint I would think is a little bit more effective, wouldn't you say?
Both biometrics are fine, either a fingerprint or facial biometrics, they're both okay. Because they're kind of unique enough to find a second one that is similar in your area is almost impossible. Okay. So the statistical likelihood that you will find somebody who is so identical to you, at least in 94, 95%, is very unlikely. Meaning that the criminal will actually look like you. That's what I mean, or look like me. Either the biometrics or the facial. So both are okay. So we use artificial intelligence for the biometrics, but you use it for a complete different thing that the criminals use it. Obviously, we use it to identify every single transaction. And again, people associate when I say that a transaction is when I send money. And no, for me, a transaction is when you log in into any account. If you would have that in your Facebook, your Twitter account, you name it, at least you protect your own account. Only you can access it with your biometrics. If your phone is stolen, even if they bypass the phone biometrics, meaning your face ID of your iPhone or your Android, that is not you. All that says is the biometrics of this device. I can access this device. The danger is if those same biometrics, once they bypass them with a PIN code, can they use them to enter your Twitter, your bank account, and everything else? Well, that is not a good idea. So we follow up the phone biometrics, followed by artificial intelligence, who checks the actual identity, owner of the card holder or owner of the bank account, or in your case, owner of your Twitter or Facebook account.
Yeah,
Okay.
they took my life. They took my life. It's okay. I'm unique to this world, so I have no problem with you trying to clone me because I think if more of me was on the planet would be a better place. On that topic, so I'm going all over the place as you're talking. Something that comes to me about I remember when the war first happened throughout for about a year, there were these two Russian comedians. They were actually like trolling leaders, calling people all over the world. And to think that they could access, I mean, I think they reached out to George Bush, they reached out to quite a few people, and they will just bypass all systems to say, I'm Volodymyr Zelensky. So that's another form of a fraud because to
Yes.
get personal information on. So I was thinking, if these people can't even be protected, we're talking
Yes.
about leaders, world leaders. There's a whole list of them. I don't remember. George Bush is one of those that I distinctly remembered. I was like, what an idiot. But anyway, so
So, yeah, these things happen.
I
Remember,
voted for Bush, but the more I get to know him, the more these people are idiots. But anyway,
these are prominent figures that you mentioned. So
They take random calls from anyone thinking it's Vladimir Zelensky on the phone with them. And these two Russian, comedian hackers they were just making their rounds, calling everyone. I think also they called Stephen King in Hollywood. There were just a list of people. So how can you even protect yourself even from people? Well, my phone number is all over the internet. If Zelensky called me, I'd hang up on him. But you know, don't take these calls. But
yeah,
how do people like that get their information taken? I mean, these are individuals, they're not, let's say these are, of course, elites, we call them, but well protected people. So what are the tips for the average person? Even if
okay,
you're not that person, because they can be hacked too.
yes,
What are the practical tips for the average person like me, who's still
yeah,
grieving the 2 days that she lost from from her life?
yeah. Remember, for somebody to impersonate somebody one, they need to get access to information of them. With social media, it's easy. They find your video, they find your voice. So what is it they miss? Is they miss your phone number. So if they hack a database, there is no protection you can do because they have all the information they need. So assuming a database is not hacked, they will call you, okay? Meaning they have your phone number. So do not publish your phone number and only give it out to people you know and you trust. On my phone, I can only receive phone calls from people who are in my phone book.
Mhm.
Okay. So even if they impersonate somebody else, it has to have the same phone number, meaning they need to know the phone number of the person they are impersonating before my phone rings. So that's an additional level of protection. So
Mhm.
set your phone on no calls from nobody who's not in your phone. Even if you need to get a call from a support center of a bank or what have you that is not in your phone, don't worry, they'll find another way to call you. They will call the phone number they have, or they will send you an email or they'll send you an SMS. But never, ever click on any link they send. Okay, because there is never any reason from any financial institutions to make you click on anything. It
Right.
is simple. Go to your own bank app yourself and open it. So ignore all the SMS, all the email, just consider them all spam and then see
Right.
which one is good. Do it the way around. Don't think the world is full of good people. Make the assumption the world is full of bad people and some of them are good. That should be the assumption.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. So
And then you'll
yeah,
be,
this is brilliant. Thank you so much. So I'm smiling because, when that thought came about these world leaders being hacked and compromised, they were
yeah.
getting all sorts of information about George Bush, about the Iraqi war. They asked him about the like,
Yeah, those are actually more sophisticated attacks because to get to those people, nobody has their phone
that's
number.
what I mean. If
Yes.
these people can be accessed, can you
Yes.
imagine? I
Yeah,
mean,
look, it happens to you and me, anyone who uses social media. Well, even prominent people,
correct. Giving away
eventually,
secrets. Why did you go to Iraq? They asked him. What was the cause for the Iraqi war? I remember, I have to look it up. It was hilarious. But at the
yeah,
same time, it was, now I see this man that I voted for in a very different light. You're an idiot, George Bush. Why would you even talk about this over the phone? So, I mean, there are some things, and that's another thing, right? So a lot of my colleagues and I are on WhatsApp, and I caution everyone to not just disclose information on WhatsApp. But what are you gonna do? The world is global now, Jose. I mean, if you don't talk on WhatsApp, where are you gonna talk? We all gonna have now. There are these phones that are being promoted as extremely secure, and I
mm,
believe Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater, is that mercenary group. Um,
yeah,
the very well known private military force of the United States government. I smile because they don't want us to know that. But anyway, so he has launched a phone company. Have you heard about that? How secure are those devices?
Well, if you have a private connection, they're very secure,
Okay.
but you have to stay within the private network. okay, which typically government officials can use, or military, or sensitive information should be on a closed network. Okay.
But
And
also going back to the flip phone, a lot of people now are going back to discarding their smartphones and going back to the flip phone. What do you think about that?
well, it's not a bad idea, but then again, it doesn't really help you in other things in life. The flip phone, it allows you to receive text and make phone calls, and that's it. So yes, you can't be spoofed other than through SMS. You still have to be careful. Okay. So if you do have social media and you do use bank apps and you're a bit more up to date with your technology, which is helpful in real life,
Mm-hmm.
I caution you, just protect yourself a bit more. It can still happen, okay? Because like I said, even family members, even knowing all the things I do, and it still happens. So statistically, it's still possible, but they drop dramatically once you take simple steps. For example, I was thinking out loud whilst you were speaking about this whatever secret force or private army.
Mm-hmm. The mercenaries.
Yes. Actually, look, in the industry, you have all these pop-ups that come around with ads, which websites and certain apps just plug them in. Why? Because they get paid for it. Okay, it's an easy way of making money if you have
Mm-hmm.
sufficient users.
Mm-hmm.
What many don't know is that these apps would then pop up advertising. They actually extract a lot of information from your device.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is as simple as extracting your IP address. It's not much. It's not even your GPS location. It's just an IP address. But your IP address can be linked to a certain area or a certain location, depending on which IP address it is. Definitely the country. Okay. So imagine if an IP address or a location pings being in the White House. So it's definitely somebody who's physically there. Okay, then they only need to find out the phone of that device. Okay, and there's sufficient apps that clone other apps which are not genuine. Like I said, you take Amazon and you change the O by a zero, and nobody would know the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is possible. Once you know that the location you're targeting, you want to find out the phone. So you'll go deeper in finding a way to find them. So extracting the phone number on Android, if you authorize it, and some people don't even know what they're authorizing, imagine they ask you for a
Right.
two-factor authentication.
Yep.
That's security, right? A wrong. Two-factor authentication is not a security when it comes by SMS. It's actually
Right.
a big thing. Because once you ask for that, you've given access
To
to,
it.
to the SMS
Yep.
and some locations to your SIM to extract the phone number. In some Androids, you can actually get the phone number too. iPhone doesn't give that anymore, but they give you the country. Okay, so there is a lot of things that are being done by advertising companies
Mm-hmm.
that extract a lot of information. And finding where you are is one of them. Why? Because for them, it's important to place ads. What's the bad news? Many of them then sell that information because it's part of doing business for them. And whoever they sell it to, we don't know what they use it for.
Right.
Many use it for good things. Okay. And
Well,
example could be, how the hell could they find that person and then call them? Well,
correct.
you
Well,
all the blocks together and you see how.
absolutely. Well, this new trend of finding your location or should, and so family members are, when you steal someone's phone, you're accessing their whole family now because their families are connected. You can find information about the whole family on the one individual's phone.
Yeah.
So everybody's at risk. And so that's what I was thinking, what you were when you were speaking about. But so the trend is protect yourself. I mean, the future trends in fraud and security is the individual. Before we relied, I think, 100% on those entities to protect us, the government included. Now, moving forward, the individual is finding out that no one's looking out for, just in besides just saying that there are only mostly criminals and then a few good people. I would say go out with the attitude of no one's looking out for you, except for you. So
It would
protect
take it
yourself,
back. Yeah,
correct?
it would be a good advice to people, even if most of them are not bad. You're
Right.
right. Just make that assumption and then take precautionary measures. Some of them are very basic, very common, but they're not taken in most of the cases. And then the suffering
Absolutely.
just starts. I mean,
Especially families with children. The children are a little bit more lax in, understanding what's at risk here. So make sure you protect yourself, protect your family, protect your wealth. And
yeah,
because every child now has a credit card. So the other point I wanted to make before I wrap up is uh being able to leave your financial footprint online because they don't need your physical card. So talk to your bank about how you can prevent from, people keeping your data online. So be very proactive and you in communicating with your financial institutions before it happens. These are preventive measures that we're talking about. So what's the final trend? What's the greatest thing that's happened? What's coming? Tell us the final trend for the future of fraud prevention.
my belief is that not far from now, we will have no login credentials. It's my belief. And the reason I say that is because there's too many institutions. It doesn't matter if they're finances, social media, whatever,
Mhm.
that are finding out that the pain to their end users sometimes doesn't outpace the benefits that they have. There is backlash. I mean, we see now the backlash you mentioned on one particular individual because he's doing political work. Now it's affecting the business. The same will happen with social media or banks eventually.
Mhm.
My view is the typical login that we know that we get the two-factor authentication SMS or by email.
Mhm.
I think all that will disappear. It will have to move to true biometrics, not the biometrics of your phone. I mean, similar like what we're doing with our technology, but done directly by the big companies. And these are the ones who have to start giving the example because they have the social responsibility for it. See, the smaller companies are actually adopting much better technology than in some cases.
I
The
believe it.
And that is a shame. Okay, so I hope some of them take the lead. I'm sure that the ones who take the lead will be remembered forever and nobody will remember the 5, 6, or 20 who came after them. Okay,
Right.
so
Absolutely.
I encourage any of the big boys, take the leap, use whoever technology, but so long you have no login that doesn't depend on true biometrics, meaning, is this Sendra D? Dorsey? Yes or no? But the question is, how do you know? It's not sufficient to say, well, I looked at the picture. No. Is this person alive? Yes, but does it statistically work in 99% of the cases? Or is this marketing 99%? If I put a real video from a real screen and I position it perfectly, criminals are very creative. So
Yes.
is it in practice really her? So did you pass a KYC? Yes. How do you know the KYC is really hers? Is it a fake document? Is it really hers? So they have to go really far, and we did that. Just to give you an idea, one of the deliveries we're going to make in the next month is actually our security technology embedded in a KYC. And this KYC, the weakest link we were discussing was, look, it doesn't matter what technology I use, even the best in class, even ours, even the best I can find in the industry, unless you allow me to check the final data. When I say everything is right,
Mhm.
let me check that this data is the same as the one on the government database. And this is a big hurdle, okay? Because governments do take everything from everyone, but don't necessarily give anything back to the industry. Okay, so allowing the major players, or at least the ones who get a license for it, to verify against the government database will remove that weakest link on the KYC. Because if that link is not good, checking afterwards that the identity is the same as that one and that one is wrong is not a good idea. Okay, so we found one so far is willing to do that. So there's always exceptions to the rule.
Absolutely, always. And it's always a pleasure to have you. And now you are a recurring guest, so come back anytime. So
Well,
would you like to share with the audience how they can reach you, institutional as well, not individuals, because you're mainly focusing on institutions, correct? Corporates. So
correct.
how can they reach you, Jose?
Easy. They can email me, my family name, Merino, Merino, at rewireholding.com. As
And
simple
you
as
are on LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn, a very high profile individual, and you can have him, you know, uh, come and do a presentation because on this fantastic platform that he has, this technology that is helping heal the world. And I hope these criminals repent. There is time for you to repent as we are, going to Easter soon. Repent your sins. We
yes.
forgive you, but you have to come clean. So that said, thank you again for joining me on the Frankly Speaking with Sendra D podcast. It's always a pleasure. And everyone, leave us the comments. Have you been a victim of this horrible experience of identity fraud and financial fraud? Let us know. If you know anyone who could benefit an institution, your own institution, you can advocate for Jose's platform, Rewire Holding, RH Security, and let them know that this fantastic protection is out there and they should benefit from it so that you can benefit from their protection. Okay, well, it's been a pleasure, and I love you so much. Until next time, everyone, make it a fantastic day and a safe day from all fraud. Oh, and don't forget, subscribe to Frankly Speaking with Sendra D's podcast and join us every week as we uncover the stories of those who triumphed over life-altering challenges to achieve not just financial success, but a richer, a deeper, a more altruistic life. It's about time we redefine what it means to be a truly affluent individual. Don't you agree? So come and join me. And let's be unstoppable on this journey called life. Because here, affluence isn't just a buzzword. It's a path to waking up to your authentic being.